JKB back with another episode. Today on the show I'm reviewing Starlink, thank you to Ubisoft for sending over the review copy. And later in the week I'll be doing a massive unboxing of some of the ships, characters, and weapons thanks to Ubisoft. The first thing I want to say about the game is that it can be played without the toys. There's a digital version of the game that can be downloaded and a deluxe digital version that unlocks all of the ships, weapons, and characters for the game. In this review, I'll be covering all three versions, but for the most part, I'm focusing on the Nintendo Switch version of the game, which has one major difference from the Xbox and PlayStation version, and that's the inclusion of Starfox and his whole crew. Not only can you play as Starfox for the whole game, but there's missions designed for just Starfox and his team. The game is set in a whole star system known as the Atlas Star System, and I'm going to kind of avoid major spoilers in this review in case you want to experience it for yourself. You'll travel between planets as you search for your captain of this mega-sized ship known as the Equinox. There's a whole crew of characters that you'll interact with on your missions via the on-screen HUD. You'll also get different types of videos that will play as you progress through the story. These characters are designed to give you a different feeling, with each of their personalities being different from one another because, well, the toys are involved. The game is clearly designed around switching your character and the ships and the weapons, which isn't a bad thing for the gameplay because it switches up the feeling of the game. And it doesn't really force you to buy the toys if you don't want to. The tone of the story is a lot like a decent Sunday morning cartoon. I have a feeling kids will get something out of it that a lot of adults may overlook in terms of the story. At times, characters will pop up on the HUD during absolute random times that feel a little out of place, but you'll soon realize that the game is so massive that Ubisoft had to come up with a way to break up the travel times in the game. And you'll do a number of different things that sort of break up the monotony of just flying through space, but one way is to have the characters move the story forward during these long journeys from planet to planet. Let's break down the gameplay so you can get a clear idea if this game is even something you want to invest your time in and a lot of money into if you plan on buying the toys. It's really easy to simply relate this game to No Man's Sky and Destiny. It shares a lot of those gameplay elements, but because the tone is more of a Sunday morning cartoon, you get something that's different here. The ships all have a different feel to the way they handle. You'll be able to build these ships up any way you like with all the different parts from each of them. You can also turn the wings around and flip them around any way you like or you see fit for your ship. The cool part is that not only will you make your ship controlled differently by the way you customize it, but you can also play into the extremely deep stats of your ship in the game, which I'll get into later into the review. I didn't realize the game had such deep modding elements. You're gonna come across a ton of loot as you travel from planet to planet and through space on your journey. You're gonna find weapon mods and ship mods that can be equipped at any time you want by pressing the plus button on your Nintendo controller or the start button on your Xbox or PlayStation 4. This is going to bring up a menu system at first that's maybe a little confusing, but after playing for a few hours, you'll start to understand exactly what's going on with this game. All of these mods add different abilities to your weapons and ships. The mods also have different tiers from common, uncommon, rare, and legendary. There's a deep system working in the background of the game that can be easily overlooked by a casual player, but I highly recommend you take the time with the modding system and change them around and kind of figure out which ones work together well. And as you get deeper into the game, you can even start to do crazy things like clone the mods or fuse the mods together to create super powerful mods for your weapons and ships, which is absolutely amazing in this game. Overall, the customization in this game has been understated by Ubisoft, and I think that's a little disappointing considering the fact that there's so much passion in this game, and because gamers who love getting into deep stats and customization will be kind of in heaven here. Another thing I have to bring up that was kind of frustrating was understanding where the stats were going with the mods, and if I was upgrading a character, would that carry over to the ship, and would the ship's mods carry over to a different ship? As I played the game, I started to realize that some of that's true and some of it isn't. And in terms of like carrying over mods, you keep all of the mods that you collect in the game, but when you switch ships and put the same weapons on from a different ship, you'll have to level that weapon up again, but you can use your old mods. That's kind of a nuisance to some people out there. I can see how that's going to be disappointing, but for me, because the game is so fun to play, I don't mind having to kind of level up and figure out my weapons on each of the ships, because then I can design it the way I like. Once it's set, you have 3 different loadouts that you can set up, and those are the ones that you'll primarily use in the game. So you won't be going all over the place trying to figure out, oh god, does this weapon work here or not? And, you know, how do these weapons work in a combo system? You'll figure it out early, you'll have a loadout, and that won't be a problem. The weapons also have elemental powers. If you unlock the full game, you get a total of 15 weapons, which are all different. Some of them have a heating effect, there's also a freezing effect, a beam gun that I love, and there's even a few weapons that cause this vortex that will suck enemy ships into this giant vortex that just crashes on the screen, and anything around it gets sucked into the vortex. And you'll notice little details that I have to tell you about because the team went out of their way. Like when you shoot this vortex weapon, you'll notice the plants are also getting sucked right into the vortex. And even the ammo you shoot out of your gun, the lasers, get sucked in the direction of the vortex. So it's really cool during a massive battle seeing all these lasers getting sucked into these vortexes. Now, the way the game works is simple. You can fly the ship anywhere at any time for the most part, and when you want to search the land of a planet, all you need to do is kind of fly into it. There's maybe a 4-second loading sort of screen that happens as you change from space into the atmosphere of the planet, and I feel that the planet combat is definitely a lot different than the space combat. When you're on land, your ship has 2 different modes. You could still fly around like you do in space, but you can also cut the main engines off and float, kind of hover, right above the ground. When you're floating around, the gameplay still feels like it did in space. You might notice that your ship kind of acts like a tank now, and some of the other ships may be faster, and that's where you have to kind of go in and discover it for yourself. But you also feel like you can do a lot more of what I'm going to say platforming, which is kind of odd to say, but you use the jump button that actually makes your ship jump, and it's also used for platforming sections, so it suddenly turns into a platformer. I think you'll spend most of your time on the planets doing side missions for the locals. There's a number of things you can do for each of the planets. For the most part, a lot of what you do is collect things for the locals and clear out enemies. Each planet has a gauge which indicates how the enemy is threatening that planet, and as you clear out the enemies on the planet, you'll take back more of the land and you'll be able to build new buildings, such as a modding station where you can fuse your weapon mods together. There's also a really fun mini boss battle that takes place on each planet that feels directly out of the Starfox lore that I know a lot of you are going to be excited about, and that's the reason why you're playing it on Switch, for Starfox. There's so much going on in this game, it's hard at times to understand exactly what you should be doing. This isn't exactly a negative towards the game because the amount of content here is absolutely impressive. I think one of the problems in the game is how it handles the amount of content that is in the game. The pacing seems to be based on how you play the game. When you're dealing with this giant open world, it's hard to hold on to all of these moments and make it feel like it's together. Make it feel like an overall experience. But Starlink is clearly built by a team of people that not only love what they do, but they have a vision to create a game without limits. The whole idea is that you do what you want. If you want to stay on the planet and collect things to sell, to upgrade, to get mods for your ship, you could do that. If you want to go directly to each of the Starfox missions without having to play much of the main campaign of Starlink, well, you can do that too. It's totally up to you, and that's the most impressive part. Does it come together to create sort of a flawless experience? Well, no, and I'll get into that, but the game does feel like it's running on the Switch in ways I've never seen games run, and that's unbelievably impressive. I know a lot of people out there have questions regarding the game's toys. Do you need them? Well, honestly, no. If you're a collector, it's going to cost you a lot of money to get a whole set of every ship, weapon, and character, but I'll say this. When you're playing the game using the digital unlock code that gives you everything in the game that you would need from the toys, you have to stop the game and go into the menu and change the weapon out that way. Sometimes that kind of totally breaks up the action, so it's a little bit more fun to just look down at a table in real time and grab your favorite weapon and just put it onto the ship in real time. I'm sold on that idea, and I'm gonna say out of that, you could spend hundreds of dollars just to be able to do this. Well, do you want to do that? I mean, that's totally up to you. I'm just saying I had fun being able to reach down and just put a weapon right on my ship in real time and see it pop into the game. I'm very impressed with what Ubisoft Toronto has done here. It's not every day you can take a whole galaxy with you onto the bus, but with the Switch version you can do that. And I should point out that there's also couch co-op when you're playing in TV mode on the Switch. This is like a throwback to the classic days of just playing with your friends, and it's just a blast to be able to do that in the game. And the game seems to handle the second player just fine with very minimal slowdown during massive battles. The second player can also use the toys, of course, but you have to go out there and get one of those Joy-Con mounts just for Starlink. And if you want to use the toys, you have to do that. So that's, an extra $20, I think, dollars. But you can also send the second player into the digital version, and he can just fiddle around with all of what you have unlocked. As you guys know, I was very impressed with Breath of the Wild because of how massive it was without the loading, and the total amount of detail was just unreal. All running on a portable gaming system, I can say the exact same thing about Starlink. It's super impressive. This is where I'm going to get into the fact that Starfox is in this game, and that'll probably be the reason why you want to get the Switch version. There hasn't been a Starfox game this good since the Super Nintendo Starfox. I'm going to say that there's two worlds mixed together here because of how toned down the story is. It's almost like Nintendo came in here and designed the game to a certain degree. The story is clearly North American, but the Starfox elements feel like the dev team was right out of Japan. There's a massive amount of passion behind this, and it's clear. You'll see it on screen. The fan service is to the max, and I'm absolutely in love with everything Starfox in this game. I could say this is my favorite Starfox game ever made, but would the dev team really want me to say that? Because the strange part of this review is having Starfox in the game the whole time is just incredible, and I can't imagine playing the game without him and his crew. And that's where the Xbox and PlayStation version comes into play. Can the game be a little repetitive? Yes, but it's a lot of fun, and that's what matters. You'll see a lot of the same enemies, but for me, at least, I feel like they added enough new twists and turns every time I went back to a planet. I played all three versions of the game, and the game looks stunning on Xbox and PlayStation, but Starfox absolutely isn't in those versions, obviously. And this is where I have to be as honest as I possibly can for myself and you and the dev team. The game has a decent story without Starfox. It's worked around the fact that you can change these characters, you could change the ships, and you can change the weapons. It's hard to tell a story that has so many different aspects based on which character you use and at what time you're using them in the game. I have to give them credit because this could have failed miserably, but it's above average storytelling. The gameplay is the same across all three versions, but there's one major thing that, you can take a wild guess here, that's on the Switch, that's gonna change everything, and that's Starfox. What can I say? He's the most powerful character in the game in terms of being a character from the past, and when you mix him into a world of unknown characters, you'll kind of want to stick with him the whole time. At least that's how I played the game, and that's why I'm going to give the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 version of the game a 7 out of 10. There's a solid game here, and that's definitely above average. The combat is a lot of fun, and that's why I recommend playing the game using the deluxe version on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Now, this is a digital-only version of the game, and you'll have a blast with all of the unlocked weapons and ships and characters. I mean, you can also go out there and buy the ships and characters if you think you need those. You can also borrow a ship from a friend and sync it to your system for 7 days. That means anytime you put a part into your ship, you'll unlock it digitally for 7 days so you can try it out, even if your friend's like, hey, give me my ship back. And for the Nintendo Switch version, I'm going to give Starlink a solid 8 out of 10, and that's mainly because of Starfox and his missions. There's a moment in the game that's so special to me that I'm not going to ruin in this review, but it took me back to the original Super Nintendo Starfox. Every single time I pressed the special ability button for Starfox. It was amazing, and the first time it happened, I'll admit, I teared up because it made me feel young again. Now, there's a ton of intricate details to this game that I'm not covering in my review for a few different reasons. Number one, I don't want the review to be 7 hours long. There's that much content in this game. I'll just break it down quick and tell you a very quick story. At one point, I went back to a planet and realized that some sort of outlaw had taken over the planet and put all of these enemies across the map, and I was like blown away that it changed that dynamically in terms of, you know, the gameplay. Then I go back into space, and all of a sudden there's this giant ship known as a dreadnought in the game, and I've got to take out the turrets and enter the ship and grab a core and bring it back somewhere, and all of these things are happening. They feel kind of like they're a dynamic event in the game, and they are to a certain extent, but I mean, I don't know how they programmed the game to do this. And as you play the game, and this is very important to say, and I'm going off script here, as you play this game, you're going to see things that most people probably won't see because the game is so gigantic in scope. I mean, there's debris that's so far out in the middle of nowhere in this game that people probably won't find it. There's planets that are so far apart, and there's so much in between those planets that I just don't know how people are going to find everything in this game. So in saying that, if you have any further questions about Starlink, please take your time and comment below, and I'll do my best to answer you. If you like this review of Starlink, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next episode of JKB.